Okay, I think what we can start off or start with, maybe Publius, is take us through what can we expect in the next few days. Where we are right now, what's happening with the vote, when do we replant, when do we unpause?
Totally. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Awesome. So, right now we are waiting for the passing of BIP 21. This can either happen in two different scenarios. Number one, tomorrow, at noon Eastern, that's Friday, noon Eastern, the BIP will end, and assuming it's still well above that, that quorum mark voted for, the BIP will automatically pass, and at that point we'll begin, applying the water treatment plan. The alternative is between now and then, the BIP reaches a supermajority, which is 2/3 of all outstanding stock. We're currently sitting at around 62%. It looks like. So we're eagerly looking at the count, and in the case where we do end up reaching a supermajority sometime today, we're already standing by, ready to get going with applying the water treatment plan. So once BIP 21 passes, as we stated, the water treatment plan will begin, and this will kind of occur in several different steps. The first step is we will, apply the steps 3 through 8, which have mostly to do with migrating unripe beans, from pre-exploit non-deposited bean state, deposited beans, as well as the same for LP. That will take place over a series of transactions, which will happen sometime within 30 minutes to potentially up to 3 hours, pending on-chain gas prices. We created this Replant updates channel down in the workshop where we'll be sharing live updates of kind of where we're at with that process, to be as transparent as possible and to keep the community in the loop. Once Replant 8 has been applied, we'll be at the stage where the full migration has happened. All balances should be set. The new bean token will be deployed. The new unripe bean tokens will be, or the unripe bean and unripe bean 3 curve tokens will be deployed. The bean 3 curve pool will be deployed and seeded with some very small initial liquidity. And, we'll be ready to move on with the replant. At this stage, we're likely going to pause for a bit for the greater Beanstalk Farms team to conduct some more forked mainnet testing to ensure that the water treatment plan was applied effectively and correctly. This pause will likely take somewhere between 1 to 2 hours, and we'll be constantly updating the community on the status of that in the Replant update channel. Upon success of testing the water treatment plan, we will move forward with the replant. Now, what this is where Publius will relinquish control of Beanstalk and the fertilizer contract. The ownership of fertilizer will move to Beanstalk. The ownership of Beanstalk will move to the BCM. And Publius will propose the diamond cut, which will upgrade Beanstalk to the BCM, as well as propose a transaction to add all of the USDC stored in the BCM wallet as the initial liquidity. Once the BCM has reviewed the diamond cut and there are enough approvals to execute the upgrade on Beanstalk, that will take place. Note that there'll likely be, another waiting period somewhere of around, an hour to 2 hours is what we can expect for the BCM to properly review the diamond cut and for more, internal Beanstalk Farms testing to occur. Once the replant is applied, we'll also briefly pause to perform some testing. And finally, we'll move forward with kind of adding the liquidity. The reason we're kind of taking so many breaks throughout the process is, there are a few pivotal moments we just want to make sure that we have, take a quick pause, make sure everything's in the right place. The first of which is, once Publius passes ownership to the BCM, we want to make sure that the water treatment plan has been correctly applied, so the BCM will never have to transfer ownership back to Publius for any reason. And then secondly, once the BCM adds the liquidity into the bean pool, there's no going back. We've officially deployed all of the fertilizer liquidity, and it's officially all locked in the smart contract, and things are rolling. So we're going to take one more pause just before that. To make sure that we're ready to go and, the water treatment and the replant have performed successfully. Once all of the liquidity has been added, again, a BCM member will propose an unpaused transaction to the BCM, which will likely just sit in the BCM for the BCM to conduct final review on the unpaused transaction itself. And then at noon Eastern on Saturday, August 6th, the BCM will propose with unpausing Beanstalk. When Beanstalk is unpaused, the first sunrise can occur with 1 to 2 hours after Beanstalk is unpaused, based on where it is in the after that. So we can expect the first sunrise call to occur around 2 p.m. Eastern time, pending no further delays. Throughout this whole process, there's going to be numerous steps where we are conducting, further testing by forking different blocks on mainnet. And if anything does come up during this process where we feel like it is not safe to continue with the replant, we are going to, likely delay and make sure everything is sorted out before continuing. So just be aware of that. And again, the replant updates channel is the place to look for, kind of all updates in regards to the status of the replant. Once it has, started, and we hope to be, as transparent as possible throughout the whole process. So please, feel free to ask any questions, and things are, happening as we all expect. So appreciate the whole community support, throughout the whole process. It's, going to be a good one, and one we've been looking forward to a long time, and can't wait to get going. We're all sitting here on Snapchat watching the vote counter, waiting for a few remaining votes to maybe come in and push this needle a little farther.
Thank you, Publius. With regards to Snapshot, I had a question just to understand it. Once we hit supermajority, is this when replant will immediately commence? We saw previously that some people can change their votes. What happens if someone wants to change their vote, after we hit supermajority?
If the supermajority is reached, the expectation is that the replant will begin immediately.
So no more chances once we hit supermajority.
Once we hit supermajority, if someone changes their vote to abstain, we still move forward with the replant.
Clear. Okay. All right. I had another question maybe before also we move to Publius, before we move to the contributors, and that has to do with maybe what are we looking forward with regards to governance, and then in specific with Seraph. Can we expect sometime soon that we start talking about introducing or including Seraph to the governance or our governance, Publius?
So this is probably one of the first BIPs that makes sense to implement after replant as an additional governance security measure, in our opinion. And I think the whole DAO is on the same page that the goal is over time to re-implement totally permissionless governance. But in the meantime, having and throughout that process, having Seraph as a last line of defense that probably does make sense. So the DAO will obviously have to vote on the Seraph integration. It would require changes to the Beanstalk code, albeit minimal changes. And so the expectation would be that would be a BIP that assuming the sentiment is generally in favor of, we can work with Halborn to put that together and propose the BIP formally, and then obviously the DAO can decide via vote.
All right. Okay, we can take a pass through the contributors. I can start maybe with Beansprout. We see that there's a proposal for a budget for Beansprout, Mr. Manifold. Can you maybe take us through it quickly? What's in the proposal, and what can we expect from Beansprout next quarter?
Hey, Mod, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, great. My Wi-Fi is a little glitchy. So quickly on that last point regarding Halborn, we've had a series of really productive calls with Halborn. Like Publius mentioned, Seraph.
I think we lost Mr. Manifold. We can ask that question back. All right, let's maybe move to the contributors right now. I can start with a bit of marketing on what we're planning ahead of Unpause. So tomorrow we have an interview with a media outlet. We have another one also that might take place tomorrow, but it's not confirmed yet. So we look forward to that. And then we'll have a special episode with the Bean Pod that will be with Publius that will also come out on Monday. Like all the other Bean Pod episodes every Monday. Then we have a Spaces with Liquidity, and all of this is happening, next week after Unpost. So we have one with Liquidity, and then we have 2 podcast appearances with Mission DeFi and Mark Jeffrey, and then Brian, who is one of our contributors. He reached out to DC of God, and we might also have join his podcast or be on his podcast. Otherwise, Mr. Manifold is back. Do you want to take us to what you were talking about?
Hey, is this a little better, guys? I'm sorry about that.
That's okay.
Okay, great. So regarding Halborn, I don't know what you heard or didn't hear before, but so Seraph will obviously come down to a BIP, and the DAO can vote whether we want to move forward with it or not. But in regards to payment for Halborn and kind of the ongoing, Seraph SaaS subscription, that's a monthly, $10K expense is what they're pricing it out. We want to, we want to make it as aligned with Beanstalk and with Beans as possible. And so, happy to say we've had some, great progress with Halborn in accepting, close to 20% of the payment in Beans. Which it definitely shows some good faith on their part and a willingness to, want to grow with Beanstalk and facilitate a longer term relationship. So that's been very constructive. On the Bean payment end, this kind of goes to the Beansprout, Q3 budget. It's probably my expectation that Beansprout at some point will propose to pay the beans from the Beansprout budget. However, the USDC or the USD end, it's looking like Root Labs might be able to cover that as a contribution to the DAO. Halborn's kind of expressed that they can take on, and what's been negotiated, they can take on multiple projects at once. And so, we're looking to kind of get creative in the funding and minimize the tax to the DAO or any sell pressure from Beans to USDC to the DAO. So that's kind of the security end. Aside from that, there's been a lot of inbound interest over the last week as we get near to unpause from developers, builders, contributors, etc. Just looking for ways to get involved and start or continue building in and around Beanstalk. And that's been great. So, we're currently working on getting, some documentation together on the Beansprout end. We're working on a post such that, anyone that is interested in contributing or building in the Beanstalk ecosystem in any capacity has, some clear steps and guidelines and action items they can take to get started, hopefully. So, look out for that in the next few days. And I guess lastly with Root, we're continuing to build. We're kind of focusing in on the fertilizer marketplace right now, such that we can hopefully have a MVP up sooner than later to provide secondary liquidity for FERT.
Thank you, Manifold, and pretty excited to see the things that come out or what has already come out from Beansprout and what will come out in the future as well. Austin, can you maybe take us through the budget that's proposed for Beanstalk Farms? Talk a little bit maybe about the BFCP proposals that are already live, and then what's the future on what you're looking at as Beanstalk Farms as an organization.
Sure. Thanks, Mod. So announced, I believe it was yesterday, we shared the drafts for BIPs 22 and 23 in Discord, which are the quarterly budget BIPs for Beanstalk Farms and Beansprout, respectively. Would encourage everyone to read the proposals and discuss in the channels, particularly interested in hearing feedback from the community on the incentive alignment section as it pertains to contributor pay being deposited in the silo to give, to align contributors with Beanstalk and give them a form of skin in the game. So would encourage everyone to read that and interested to hear what people have to say about it. On that front, I know there's been BFP 81 outlined a handful of restructuring to all the proposal types. And I know there's kind of like a lot of in the weeds terminology, so we just published some docs on that. And related, if you now go to the Beanstalk DAO snapshot page, which I'll just drop here, you should also be able to click on the different subspaces for proposals related to Beansprout, Beanstalk Farms, and the committee, and uses of the Beanstalk Farms budget. So if any of that's unclear at any point, feel free to shoot me a note or tag me in docs feedback or something like that. On a related note, I guess other documentation work and preparation for Replant. Been spending a lot of time with Chad, Red Beans, and Cool Bean on website copies. So after that goes live and the Replant is successful, if anything is confusing on the front end, feel free to tag me in the UI feedback channel. Let's see what else. There were a handful of questions about after the sharing the draft for BIP 22 about Beanstalk Farms contributors getting paid retroactively in unripe beans. So essentially, there's going to be this one-time Beanstalk Farms retroactive payment proposal where each contributor writes a proposal to be paid retroactively in unripe beans, and I'll be working on aggregating those drafts together and then sharing with the DAO hopefully sometime next week. I think that's mostly on my end. I guess kind of unrelated but important is we kicked off the process for spinning up a bug bounty program. Hopefully we can have that up and running with ImmuneFi before the end of Q3. But yeah, that's a handful of updates on my end.
Thank you, Austin. Mr. Manifold, we have a question from Beanology, and that's about the priorities for Halborn. There were a few points highlighted by Trail of Bits that they say that they didn't have the time to look into it. Will this be something that we will want Halborn to look into?
So to jump in for a sec, the Halborn did already do a full audit of all of the Beanstalk contracts, and therefore it's not as much as having them look at the stuff Trail of Bits didn't look at. They already looked at it. Going forward, the goal of having Halborn on retainer and the structure of the agreement that they've structured for Beanstalk is pretty cool, where we can have multiple, up to 2 simultaneous work streams happening at once, such that there can be, for example, an audit of a BIP that's going to be proposed shortly, for example, the Seraph BIP, and the website can be audited. So the goal is to, at some point, open source the website. That is going to be a major project. It's been a goal from the time we originally deployed Beanstalk about a year ago, and it still hasn't happened because of how big a task it is, and making sure that it's secure and having them audit the website is going to be a major project. There's lots of BIPs that we hope to have them audit. And then in general, when you think about some of the other things that risk vectors around Beanstalk right now, social engineering around the multi-sig, best practices on custody, all of this stuff are things that they can support us with and advise on best practices and do an audit of the current procedures, for example, in order to further improve the security of Beanstalk, the quality of the DAO. And the reality is we don't intend to stop pushing code anytime soon. There's lots of upgrades and improvements and new features that can be implemented over the coming months and maybe even years. And having Halborn on retainer to be able to, in real time, constantly be auditing anything that is necessary is, in our opinion, essential to continuing to be able to move at the pace that things were moving prior to the attack.
Thank you for that. Beanology, follows up again and asks if there were areas that you think Trail of Bits were light on or they didn't cover that we are interested in.
Well, so if you look at the Trail of Bits report, there were a couple of facets that they didn't look at, and it is worth stating that in a perfect world they would have audited every facet entirely. The structure of the Trail of Bits audit was a little funky, where they advised us it would be like a 2-week audit. We paid for 4 weeks up front just in case they would need extra time, because we recognized the complexity of the code at the time we booked the audit back in I think it was October or November or something. And the audit was originally booked for 3 weeks then, and they needed the fourth week. And we told them, money shouldn't be the issue here. If you guys can continue to audit the code, if there's more work to be done, money shouldn't be the issue. And they basically were like, we're out of time. And so there were certain facets that it seems, based on the report, they didn't look at as in depth as they looked at other facets. I think it is worth noting that going forward, if there's another Trail of Bits audit, it may be worth having them look at that first. If there's another audit firm that starts to look at Beanstalk, it's worth having them look at that first. But as far as we understand it, Halborn has already audited each of the, I believe it was 3 facets that Trail of Bits said that they didn't audit in full. And so perhaps one of the projects that it makes sense for Halborn to endeavor on at the beginning is a second audit of those 3 facets. But the absence of a complete audit from Trail of Bits on those facets is it's almost impossible to evaluate the relative risk that would be alleviated had they gone through the full audit. Halborn has gone through the full audit of those facets, and as we've said before, the audits are not the thing that matters. There's no seal of approval that can make a difference on this stuff. The only thing that will ultimately prove security is being out in the wild with significant amounts of value at risk. So that's the nature of the beast here. So to some extent, it would always, more audits are always better, but not sure that it's, I don't know. I think it's pretty clear where we're at on this front at this point.
Thank you, Publius. And Bilology, just to highlight, because our next auditor, or the one that we're planning on retaining, is Halborn, and Halborn already looked into the code or the facets. Chad, do you want to maybe give us a summary? We already looked into the website, so we have an idea of what the new UI will look like. Do you want to give us maybe briefly what can we expect? Any changes that are currently worked on?
Yeah, for sure. And for those of you who are just joining us this week, there should be a recording of last week's DAO meeting where we did a demo of the website. So if you're interested, please feel free to go check that out. Some updates and sort of a timeline for the next couple days on the website's front. So as the replant will be the V2 website and the new subgraph. During the replant, the current website will be taken down as the contracts are getting migrated, and so many calls will begin to fail. And the V2 website will be deployed upon completion of the replant. So sometime, call it in the next 24 to 36 hours. For some expectation setting on the new site, so all of the core functionalities shown in last week's demo will be available. So definitely go check that out. Some pages throughout the site will have an under construction message as we sort of wrap some things up and get the website redeployed, notably the trade page and certain analytics graphs. So for now, you can use the Curve pool on the Curve website directly to buy or sell beans like you would have on the prior trade page. But also just wanted to note that on pages like the silo, you can buy and deposit beans directly in one transaction. So no need to go to the Curve website to purchase beans first if you're interested in doing that. We'll be working on trade throughout the week to try to get that online as quickly as possible so everything can be done through the UI. In addition, we'll write a change log with all supported features for the V2 UI and release that in the UI updates channel. So keep an eye out for that. And if you're wondering if something is supported right now or not, that's the best place to look. Let's see. So from there, we've done a pretty extensive testing of the new UI, but given the transition and the changes to Beanstalk, it's possible that we'll encounter some bugs. So if you have any issues with the new site, please sort of do the following. So first, check the Farmer's Almanac at docs.bean.money and look out for any tooltips that are on the website to help explain what's going on. If that doesn't answer your question, feel free to ask a question in the questions channel in Discord. Or if you feel like you've encountered a bug or some other broken functionality, head to the UI feedback channel in the workshop, and we'll help get things ironed out. Myself, Coolbean, and others who are keeping an eye on this. So one last note on that: if you're a farmer who's spent a lot of time around Beanstalk and around the UI, and you want to help field some questions here, please shoot me a DM, and I can help get you up to speed with where things are at and walk you through the docs and stuff. So. With that, happy to answer any questions on the front end, but excited to get this thing back on.
Thank you, Chad. I have one last thing to say or mention, but maybe before that, we'll open the floor to any questions before we conclude the meeting. If anyone has it, I see a few people typing, but they're mostly typing, goating you, Chad. Okay. So God willing, whether we reach supermajority or the BIP concludes, Beanstalk will unpause on Saturday. That's August 6th. And we're looking at 9 a.m. Pacific time or noon Eastern. We will be hosting a live Twitter Spaces where we will group together and then unpause Beanstalk. I'm going to throw in just a bit like an invitation into the town hall chat, and there are two rumors circling around. The first one is that Beethoven will join us and bless us with some music. And then the second one is that Beanball might, make a special appearance, and we'll leave it at that. Hope to see you all on Saturday. And if any other questions, feel free to drop them. We're happy to answer them at any time. Thank you all for joining this meeting.